This video is going to be on receiving in a PO invoice. In our last video, we discussed receiving in an actual purchase order. This time we're going to receive in the invoice from the vendor for that purchase order. I'm going to come up to my accounts payable and click on accounts payable. Then I'm going to go over here to the enter PO invoices icon. When I click on that, I'm prompted for an entry number. I click enter on the entry number and I type in my vendor ID. In this case, it's from Nucor, so I can hit enter on Nucor, and I'm prompted for the invoice date. I'm going to put in an invoice date, so my invoice date is going to be today's date, and so I will put in 08/2114. At that point, it calculates a GL date based on their terms and a due date. I type in my invoice number that I find from the invoice that they are giving me, and I do not need a description. I'm now prompted for the subtotal. I look down at the bottom of my invoice and the subtotal is $12,128.52. At this point, if I'm going to be given a discount, the discount will pull in with a discount date. My terms are not set up for a discount, they're just net 30 in this instance, so I'm just going to hit enter. I'm going to leave all the other fields blank for this first one that we're doing. I'm going to say header finished. If you notice now it comes down to the bottom. Now why it does this is now we're going to be trying to match up what they told you, what they're invoicing you for what you actually received in. So I can look up my PO or I can type in my PO. In this case, I'm looking at the bottom of the invoice and it says this is based on 4024 for the PO. You notice my cost type says material. The receiving was 613. And that has a pending amount of $12,128.52. In this instance, it's the exact same. So that's really easy. I type in being invoiced for $12,128.52. It matches up. There's no variance between the subtotal, what they're billing you, and what you say you received in. At that point, you can say detail finished, and the invoice is finished. That's about as easy as it comes. Now, in this instance, it also had a freight on that PO that we were doing. So let's say we received in the freight invoice. So I'm coming down and I say, okay, the freight invoice was also from Nucor Steel, and then I'd hit enter. Now if it was from a different vendor, I could type in yellow freight, whatever I wanted to do. In this instance, I'm being invoiced today as well for that. And they're giving me a different invoice number. Now you typically would probably be having the freight invoice be billed with the PO invoice, but I'm just showing you it can be billed differently. In this case, it's $100 for the freight. I can type in the same PO number, but in this instance, I say the cost type that they're billing me for is freight. So I could have done this as well when I received in the first invoice. I could have just done the first line as the material, second line as freight. I just wanted to show you can do them separately as well. And in this instance, when I go look at my freight, it says that that's $100 in pending freight. So I'm being invoiced for $100, and I was invoiced for my freight and for my material. At that point, I can print, and it gives me my invoices. In this case, it separates them out from my freight and my material invoice. And I'm now ready to post the invoice. I hit the little post button and say yes to post, and then my accounts are updated. Now that is a really simple and easy receiving of the PO invoice. Let's say if there's a little bit of a variance. So let's do one like that. So now this time I'm going to do hammer steel. I'm going to again do today's date for my invoice. I'm going to type in a different invoice number. And so at this point, I'm going to say that they billed me $1,146. So I say okay, and I say header finished. I come down and I look that they're billing me for PO number 4026. At that point, I say, okay, wait a minute. There's a variance here. Why is there 1,000 and they're billing me for 1,146? Now I can go look up and see if they're billing me for any freight or surcharge, and if they are, then that might be the difference. But let's say in this instance I'm calling them and they say, well, you forgot the $146 surcharge that we discussed with you. And you say, oh, okay, well, then I agree. I remember that I forgot to type that in, that there was a surcharge. So I put in 1,146 is legit. Now when I do that, you notice it says there's a variance of $146. Well, those tags that I received in were all based on this $1,000. So I'm going to have to add $146 to this, to all those tags. Well, in most systems, you have to go in and do that individually at a different time. In this case, you just click on Adjust Tag Cost, and then you say, I want to list all of my tags that were affected, and it will list all the tags, even the ones that have been shipped, if there are any. And you say, okay, so now I see that I have $146 I need to add to those tags, so I say do a lot charge, increase it by $146. In that case, it will take that $146 lot charge and divide it up amongst all the tags. In this case, there's only one tag, so it's going to bump up that tag from $1,000 to $1,146. There's my total adjustment. I post the adjustment, and it warns me if I'm missing any values. In this case, I missed an adjustment date, and then I post. It adjusts it and gives me an audit number, and now I did that all without having to go to the inventory module. And now when I say detail finish, it'll ask me if I want to clear the variance. And I can say yes, and that'll clear my variance from the other side. Now this is a little pop-up that you can have set on your feature initialization screen if you want to actually define what GL account. If not, it'll just pull in your variance account from your feature initialization 2000. In this case, I said I want to hit the variance of $146 and clear the variance. What that does is that will clear the variance from the other side. So on the inventory, it debited the inventory, increased it by $146, and credited the variance account. In this case, it debited that variance account to wash out when we credit our pending AP, and it debits that variance. If that makes sense. When I'm done, I say invoice finished, and now I can post. And now, if I go look at my invoices under the accounts payable, I can come and I can say accounts payable. I can go look at my vendors. I can pull up my new core vendor, look at the vendor activity, and I can see my invoice there for $12,000 and the one for $100. And that's how you receive in a PO invoice.